Hello again, everybody. I'm Matt Robinson, and welcome to another exciting edition of the program. This is the program where we get you caught up on anything and everything happening around the NFL. Coming up on this edition of the program, we'll preview Week 18's most important games, including the big one between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. That's right, Week 18, it's the regular season finale, so some teams have locked down their playoff spots already. Others are hoping to win and get a little help, while other teams, all they have to do is win and get in. So again, we'll preview Week 18's most important games and so much more. Plus, we have your game picks, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. And before we begin, I would like to extend my thoughts and prayers to the victims' families and everyone that was impacted by the horrific tragedy in New Orleans, specifically on Bourbon Street on New Year's Day. Again, I like to extend my thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims that were just impacted deeply by the horrific tragedy that happened in New Orleans. And again, my thoughts and prayers are with you. From my family to yours, I like to wish you and yours a happy new year. All right, as always, I like to start off with my top three storylines. I like to start off talking about Jayden Daniels. I've said it before. If this is your first time listening to the show, or if you've listened to previous shows, you've heard me say this time and time again. Jayden Daniels is a star, and he is on the verge of becoming a superstar. And what he's done this year in his rookie season has been phenomenal. We saw the Hail Mary against the Chicago Bears. We saw what he did against the Philadelphia Eagles several weeks ago. And as recent as last Sunday night, with the impressive come from behind victory going into overtime to beat the Atlanta Falcons. Jayden Daniels has literally carried this team on his back. And not just with Jayden Daniels, but the rest of the Commanders as well. When you've got Terry McLaurin, you've got Brian Robinson Jr., you've also got Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu and company. And how about tight end Zach Ertz, who has found the fountain of youth in his first year with Washington? And Dan Quinn definitely deserves strong consideration to be a candidate for a coach of the year. Jayden Daniels, I mean, Washington has found their franchise quarterback for the next decade and a half. Robert Griffin III's rookie year was phenomenal, but this hits different. With Jayden Daniels, this just hits different. I think maybe because maybe the team is more complete, or maybe RG3 skills were phenomenal, but I think Jayden's skills are just through the roof. You know, RG3 coming out of Baylor, great athlete. Jayden is a great athlete as well, but I honestly think that Jayden is a better passer than Robert. But much respect to Robert, because his rookie year was phenomenal, but it just hits different with Jayden Daniels. It's something different with Jayden. And the franchise sees this. The team feeds off of the energy. The fans are feeding off the energy. This is a newfound life for Commanders fans. And also recently, I know this is not a political show. We talk NFL, sports, and things of that nature. But recently, RFK Stadium was granted back to the city of D.C. So it's no longer owned by the federal government. The District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., now has control of RFK Stadium. So there's been reports that the new majority owner of the team, Josh Harris, there's a strong possibility of the Commanders moving back to the nation's capital and playing at RFK Stadium in D.C. as opposed to playing maybe between 30 to 40 minutes away in Landover, Maryland. And there's a lot of buzz behind that as well. And the Commanders, they've got a big commitment, right? I mean, they are just rocking and rolling. And what a season it's been for the Washington Commanders, just all around, offense, defense, and all the players that I mentioned earlier. But Jayden Daniels is just something special. And I feel that the best is only going to get better. And Jayden Daniels is on top of his game right now. And, man, the future is definitely bright for the team in the nation's capital. My next storyline is going to be Saquon Barkley. I've said it time and time again on previous shows that Saquon Barkley is my MVP. Some people could say Lamar Jackson. Some people say Derrick Henry. Some people say Josh Allen. There's even some people that could vouch for Sam Darnold. But for me, this year is Saquon Barkley. And what an amazing year that he had this year, rushing for over 2,000 yards, becoming the ninth running back in NFL history to join the 2,000-yard club. You know, we all love records. We all love to watch records be broken, right? We all want to watch milestones. We all want to watch players achieve milestones, hit accolades. We want to see those things happen. I mean, after all, records are made to be broken, right? Unfortunately, we will not see that happen. Head coach Nick Sirianni has decided that he's going to bench Saquon, even though Saquon is 101 yards away from breaking Eric Dickerson's NFL single season rushing record. And not just as a journalist and a broadcaster, but as a fan, I'm disappointed to see this. I really am. I get it. Coach Sirianni, he's looking at the bigger picture and things of that nature, and I get it. But man, it would have been something just to see Saquon break this record. And I know the Eagles will be the number 2 seed, and they're going to be playing a wild card game the following week. So I understand that Saquon's got to get his rest. Jalen Hurts, he's still in concussion protocol. There's a lot of starters that will not be playing in the finale. So I get it. I get it in the bigger picture, but it just would have been so much fun to watch him break that record. Saquon, in an interview during the week, said that he was a little disappointed behind that, but he sees the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is hopefully getting to New Orleans in February and hoisting that Lombardi trophy. But man, what an amazing year it's been for Saquon Barkley. We talk about X factors and difference makers. Derrick Henry, X factor, difference maker for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, Lamar Jackson's in a class by himself, but Derrick Henry really gave the Ravens offense new life this year. Saquon Barkley was just on a whole nother level, just being an X factor and a difference maker for the Philadelphia Eagles. So yeah, I'm bummed, and a lot of other people are bummed as a result of him not getting the opportunity to break the record. But I guess in the bigger picture, you want your stars to be healthy. You don't want to risk injury. But man, what an incredible year it was for the MVP candidate, Saquon Barkley. And for my last storyline is going to be the Vikings-Lions game. So it is official. Both of these two teams, unprecedented for the first time ever in NFL history, will have two teams that will play for not only the NFC North title, but they also play for the number 1 seed and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. These two teams have really been on a collision course. The Detroit Lions, you know about the heartbreak of last year, right? Losing in the NFC Championship game to the San Francisco 49ers. Well, the Lions are back this year, and they're a team on a mission. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, Tim Patrick, head coach Dan Campbell doing an amazing job. Again, deserves a strong consideration for Coach of the Year honors. And the Minnesota Vikings, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold basically going through the line of fire with the New York Jets, then a short stint with the Carolina Panthers and with the San Francisco 49ers, signs a 1-year deal during the offseason with the Vikings after J.J. McCarthy suffered that devastating injury. Sam Darnold just came out of nowhere this year. And again, a lot of people, we talk about the MVP candidates with Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. You got to put Sam Darnold's name in that number as well. And Sam Darnold has played at such a high level. Not just Sam Darnold, but also to his other teammates as well. Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson. Also, Jordan Addison has been a nice complimentary piece to Justin Jefferson. I'm sorry. A nice complimentary piece to Justin Jefferson. So And then TJ Hawkinson has played pretty well coming back from injury. And the Vikings defense has been really good this year. And they've really stifled a lot of opponents. This Vikings Lions game is going to be should be one for the record books, right? I mean, there's so much at stake. It's a Sunday night game. It's a big game. And man, this is one of these classic rivalry games, not just in the NFC North, just the NFL and sports and period. And certainly Vikings and Lions won't disappoint because there's a lot at stake in this game. Well, this year was the first year that the NFL and Netflix joined forces to broadcast NFL action on Christmas Day. My goodness, this could be a winning combination. Now, for those of you sports fans out there, even those of you that may not be diehard sports fans, but you would know that Christmas Day belongs to the NBA. At the end of the Los Angeles Lakers and Golden State Warriors game, LeBron James says he loved the NFL, but he said Christmas, he said, quote, but Christmas is our day, end quote, meaning that he loves the NFL, but Christmas belongs to the NBA. And yeah, Christmas has been and still is the NBA's day. But the NFL is the NFL is slowly catching up, man. And I tell you one thing, and it was a major success on Christmas Day, not just for the NBA, but most importantly for the NFL as well. And the NFL is slowly catching up to the NBA in terms of jockeying for position on Christmas Day. So Netflix set records as the most streamed NFL games in U.S. history, while the NBA had its best holiday numbers in 5 years. This is according to Nielsen. Of course, Nielsen is the company that's responsible for figuring out the television ratings and things of that nature. The NFL and Nielsen said that 65 million U.S. viewers tuned in for at least 1 minute of one of the two NFL games. So, again, according to the figures released by Nielsen, the Baltimore Ravens and the Houston Texans game averaged 24.3 million viewers. The Kansas City Chiefs victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers averaged 24.1 million. So, hey, again, Christmas is still the NBA's day, but the NFL is continuing to make its mark, especially on as far as holiday coverage is concerned. And then according to the NBA and Nielsen, the NBA's 5-game slate, because there were 5 games that were carried on ABC, ESPN, and its platforms. The 5-game NBA slate averaged about 5.25 million viewers per game. So that's a lot considering what the NBA has gone through this year with the horrible ratings and just the lack of the versatility in the play. But again, when you think of certain holidays, you think of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving belongs to the NFL. Christmas belongs to the NBA. But this Christmas was it was different because the NFL and Netflix, they set records. Oh, and a performer by the name of Beyonce, right? That halftime show. I mean, hey, I mean, what more can you say about Beyonce, right? AKA the Beyonce Bowl. Beyonce performed at the halftime show of the Ravens Texans game, and according to Nielsen, the 13-minute halftime performance averaged over 27 million viewers. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Her 13-minute halftime performance averaged over 27 million viewers on Netflix. So, man, this was wow. I mean, again, LeBron, I agree with him on Christmas still belonging to the NBA, but the NFL is catching up, and especially with holidays, my goodness. And then also, too, of course, for those of you that may remember when Netflix, their first attempt at carrying live sports, the whole Jake Paul, Mike Tyson situation, a lot of viewers complained about the buffering, audio issues, just the whole broadcast just being in disarray. But there were fewer complaints this time around. The only problems that occurred, according to people on social media, as well as people that spoken to different media outlets was that there was some issues at the beginning, like particularly at the beginning of the pregame show, but overall complaints were far and few between, and that was a big win for Netflix. And will Netflix have the possibility of carrying more than Christmas Day games in the future? That's a strong possibility. Only time will tell. But I know currently Netflix has a 3-year contract with the NFL to carry Christmas Day games. 2024, this year was 2 games. In 2025, it will be 1 game. And then in 2026, it will be 1 game. So I believe there could be more coming, but we'll see. But man, again, it was a major success, not just with the games, not just with the NBA on Christmas, but with the NFL on Christmas and their partnership with Netflix and of course Beyonce. That helps as well too. I mean, a global phenomenon that she is performing at the halftime show with the Ravens and Texans game. So certainly that was a major success for Netflix and the NFL. So we also had the Pro Bowl rosters that were released. And let's start off with the AFC. Our quarterbacks for the AFC, the starter will be Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills. And the reserves will be Joe Burrow from the Cincinnati Bengals and Lamar Jackson from the Baltimore Ravens. There's a certain quarterback from a Midwestern team that's not on this roster. A lot of people have been kind of up in arms about this. I think it rhymes with Gnomes. Oh, Mahomes. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. He's not on the roster this year. I mean, I think it's justifiable. I think Patrick had a decent year, but Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson, they just put up monster numbers. That's how I see it. But nevertheless, the quarterbacks for the AFC will be Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. At the running back position, the starter is Derrick Henry from the Baltimore Ravens. And in the reserves will be Joe Mixon from the Houston Texans and Jonathan Taylor from the Indianapolis Colts. The fullback is Patrick Ricard from the Baltimore Ravens. The wide receivers, the starters are Jamar Chase from the Cincinnati Bengals and Jerry Jeudy from the Cleveland Browns. And the reserves are Nico Collins from the Houston Texans and Zay Flowers from the Baltimore Ravens. At the tight end position, the starter is Brock Bowers from the Las Vegas Raiders, and the reserve is Travis Kelce from the Kansas City Chiefs. At offensive tackle, the starters are going to be Dion Dawkins from the Buffalo Bills and Laramie Tunsil from the Houston Texans. And the reserve is going to be Rashawn Slater from the Los Angeles Chargers. At the offensive guard position, the starters are going to be Quentin Nelson from the Indianapolis Colts and Joe Thuney from the Kansas City Chiefs. And the reserve is going to be Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs. At the center position, the starter is Creed Humphrey from the Kansas City Chiefs. And at the reserve position is Tyler Linderbaum from the Baltimore Ravens. Let's switch over to defense. The defensive end position, the starters are going to be Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns and Trey Hendrickson from the Cincinnati Bengals. And the reserve is going to be Max Crosby from the Las Vegas Raiders. At defensive tackle, Cam Hayward from the Pittsburgh Steelers and Chris Jones from the Kansas City Chiefs are the starters. And the reserve will be Nnamdi Madubuike from the Baltimore Ravens. At outside linebacker, the starters are going to be Nick Bonito from the Denver Broncos and TJ Watt from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reserve will be Khalil Mack from the Los Angeles Chargers. At inside middle linebacker, the starter will be Roquan Smith from the Baltimore Ravens. And at the reserve position, Zaire Franklin from the Indianapolis Colts. At cornerback, the starters will be Derek Stingley Jr. from the Houston Texans and Patrick Surtain II from the Denver Broncos. And the reserves will be Marlon Humphrey from the Baltimore Ravens and Denzel Ward from the Cleveland Browns. At the free safety position, Minkah Fitzpatrick from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at strong safety, the starter will be Kyle Hamilton from the Baltimore Ravens. And the reserve position and the reserve spot for strong safety will be Derwin James from the Los Angeles Chargers. And at special teams, the long snapper will be Ross Matisic from the Jacksonville Jaguars. At punter, it'll be Logan Cook from the Jacksonville Jaguars. The place kicker will be Chris Boswell from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Return specialist will be Marvin Mims from the Denver Broncos. And at special teams, Brendan Schooler from the New England Patriots. That's the Pro Bowl roster for the AFC. Let's move over now to the NFC. The starting quarterback for the NFC will be Jared Goff from the Detroit Lions. And the reserves, Sam Darnold from the Minnesota Vikings and Jaden Daniels from the Washington Commanders. At running back, the starter will be Saquon Barkley from the Philadelphia Eagles. And the reserves, Jahmyr Gibbs from the Detroit Lions and Josh Jacobs from the Green Bay Packers. At fullback, Kyle Juszczyk from the San Francisco 49ers. The starters at the wide receiver position, Justin Jefferson from the Minnesota Vikings and Amon-Ra St. Brown from the Detroit Lions. And the reserves are CeeDee Lamb from the Dallas Cowboys and Terry McLaurin from the Washington Commanders. At the tight end position, the starter is George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers, and the reserve is Trey McBride from the Arizona Cardinals. With the offensive line, at the offensive tackle position, the starters are Penei Sewell from the Detroit Lions and Lane Johnson from the Philadelphia Eagles. And the reserve is Tristan Wirfs from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At offensive guard, the starters are Landon Dickerson from the Philadelphia Eagles and Tyler Smith from the Dallas Cowboys. And at the reserve position, Chris Lindstrom from the Atlanta Falcons. And at the center position, Frank Ragnow from the Detroit Lions. And the reserve position, Cam Jurgens from the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's move over now to the defense. At the defensive end position, the starters, Nick Bosa from the San Francisco 49ers, Micah Parsons from the Dallas Cowboys, and the reserve is Rashawn Gary from the Green Bay Packers. At defensive tackle, the starters are Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants and Jalen Carter from the Philadelphia Eagles. And at the reserve position, Vita Vea from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. At outside linebacker, the starters, both from the Minnesota Vikings, Jonathan Greenard and Andrew Van Ginkel. And at the reserve position, Jared Verse from the Los Angeles Rams. At inside middle linebacker, the starter is Fred Warner from the San Francisco 49ers, and the reserve is Zach Bond from the Philadelphia Eagles. We move over to the cornerback position. The starters are Jalen Johnson from the Chicago Bears and Byron Murphy Jr. from the Minnesota Vikings. And the reserves are J.C. Horn from the Carolina Panthers and Devon Witherspoon from the Seattle Seahawks. At the free safety position, Xavier McKinney from the Green Bay Packers. And the strong safety, the starter is Budda Baker from the Arizona Cardinals. And the reserve is Brian Branch from the Detroit Lions. And at special teams, the long snapper is Andrew DePaula from the Minnesota Vikings. The punter, Jack Fox from the Detroit Lions. The place kicker, Brandon Aubrey from the Dallas Cowboys. Return specialist, Cavante Turpin, also from the Dallas Cowboys. And at special teams, Kadaro Hodge from the Atlanta Falcons. And there you have it. Those are your Pro Bowl rosters for the 2025 Pro Bowl. Now, a lot of this could change. So you probably heard me say, you probably were thinking to yourself, I didn't hear my favorite player or players being called on the roster. Well, again, this is the roster that was selected. This was all according to the fan votes. Now, this could change due to players being injured and deciding not to participate, or players that could be replaced either due to injury or choosing not to play, or players that were selected but choosing not to participate. Also, too, players that was selected but not playing due to their team possibly being in the big one in New Orleans in February. So right now, this is the current rosters, but a lot of this is going to change, and I'll keep you updated in terms on who's going to remain playing in the Pro Bowl, who's not going to be playing, whether it be due to injury or just not participating by choice, or if injury comes up, or again, circumstances happen if they play in the big one in February. But right now, that's our rosters for the 2025 Pro Bowl, both AFC and NFC. And of course, Peyton Manning will be the coach of the AFC. Eli Manning will be the head coach of the NFC. And again, the game will it will be the Pro Bowl games, and it'll take place on January the 30th and February the 2nd. And it'll be on ESPN, ABC, and also ESPN Plus. Well, it'll combine it'll have a contest with skills competitions, and then with skills competitions will be January the 30th, and then February the 2nd, you'll have not only skills competitions, but also too, you'll have the flag football game that will close out everything for the 2025 Pro Bowl games. All right, now let's preview Week 18's most important games in the NFL. NFC South rivalry game with the New Orleans Saints going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's start off with New Orleans for a moment. A disappointing year, a year filled with injuries, also a year filled with coaching changes. Dennis Allen was at the helm at the beginning of the year. He's out. In comes Darren Rizzi. And Rizzi's got the team fired up and gives them a sense of purpose, a sense of confidence. And they were able to get some key wins under Coach Rizzi, but the injuries and the inconsistent play have just become too much for the Saints to overcome. And certainly, speaking of being overcome, a lot of emotions. I know the Saints are going to be in Tampa, filled with a lot of emotions going into this game after what happened with the tragedy that happened in New Orleans, specifically on Bourbon Street. And I know the Saints are going to have a lot to play for, and they want to end the year on a positive note. As for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they have a lot to play for. They have a playoff, not only a playoff spot, but also a division title as well, because if they win, they're in. If they lose, it's going to be trouble. So the Saints are going to have a lot to play for, just in terms of a pride of a great American city. And also, too, the Buccaneers have a lot to play for, too, in terms of securing not only a division title, but a playoff spot. So many emotions. There's always emotions when the Saints and the Buccaneers play. But, I mean, just considering the magnitude of what's happened this week, it's definitely going to be emotions running high in this one with the New Orleans Saints going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We have the Carolina Panthers going up against the Atlanta Falcons. So for the Panthers, again, much of the year, not so great. They played musical chairs at the quarterback position. Bryce Young started off the year not so hot. Out goes Bryce, in comes the tried and true veteran Andy Dalton. Not much progress. Bryce comes back in and gets the starting job, and the Panthers start making a lot of waves within almost the last month and a half of the year, winning some games, winning some close games, but also losing a lot of close games as well. But I think the future is bright in Carolina. I think people were ready to write Bryce Young off. I don't think Bryce should be written off just yet. As for the Atlanta Falcons, tough loss last week to the Washington Commanders on Sunday Night Football, but the future is now with Michael Penix Jr., also Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, just to name a few, Drake London. And the Falcons have a lot to play for as well, because they're playing for a division title and a playoff spot as well, because Atlanta's in the same position as the Buccaneers. So this should be an interesting game. It's always interesting when you have an NFC South rivalry game, and never a dull moment between the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons. We have a classic rivalry game, one of the best rivalry games, not just in the NFL, but in all of sports. Washington going up against Dallas. Washington Commanders going up against the Dallas Cowboys. So let's start off with the Cowboys. It's just been a Dallas Cowboys year, right? I mean, it's the soap opera that never ends, right? So Jerry Jones being Jerry, Micah Parsons, voicing a lot of his concerns, and rightfully so. And, we had a ton of injuries with the Cowboys. Dak Prescott done for the year. CeeDee Lamb will not play in the finale. They've sidelined him for the remainder of the year with a shoulder injury. But if there was any bright spots for the Cowboys season this year, of course, CeeDee Lamb, he makes another Pro Bowl. Tyler Smith at the offensive line position, he makes a Pro Bowl. Micah Parsons, I mean, what a talent he is. He makes a Pro Bowl as well. Brandon Aubrey, man, you talk about an iron foot. That dude can kick like nobody's business, right? Making field goals from here to Timbuktu and then some. I mean, that ball travels so far when he kicks a ball. It's insane. And the Cowboys, they've gone through it this year. And the Cowboys recently, during the week, they released running back Ezekiel Elliott. They thought Zeke in his second stint in Dallas would do some things, but unfortunately it didn't work out with his second time around in Dallas. As for Washington, what an amazing year it has been. The fan base, the franchise, everybody is on board. For Washington, Terry McLaurin, one of the most underrated players and wide receivers in the NFL. He makes a Pro Bowl. And of course, Jaden Daniels most likely will win this year's Offensive Rookie of the Year. I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the show about RG3, Robert Griffin III, and an amazing rookie year that he had. But with Jaden Daniels, this just feels different. Jaden is just on a whole nother level. And certainly not just with Jaden, but the Commanders played on a whole nother level on Sunday night, getting that overtime victory over the Atlanta Falcons. So Washington's got a lot to play for in terms of possibly securing a higher playoff seed. Dallas, they have nothing to play for, but it's a rivalry game. They're going to give it all that they have in Jerry World in Arlington, Texas, with the Washington Commanders going up against the Dallas Cowboys. We have a rivalry game in the AFC West with the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Denver Broncos. So for Kansas City, nothing to play for. They're the number one seed. They've got home field advantage. They are secure. They're going to have a lot of time off. So we're going to see a whole lot of Carson Wentz in this contest. And as far as Denver is concerned, Denver, this is a must win for them. Denver wins and they're in. Simple as that. Denver beats the Chiefs, they're in the playoffs. If they don't win, well, they're going to be getting ready for Cancun or Cabo San Lucas or Nassau, wherever they like to go on vacation, right? So Kansas City, again, a lot of great things happen with them in terms of Pro Bowl selections. Travis Kelce selected to another Pro Bowl. Also, Joe Thuney and Trey Smith on the offensive line. They're going to a Pro Bowl as well. Denver, I mean, Sean Payton, year 2. Man, you talk about what a difference a year makes. And especially you get a rookie quarterback like Bo Nix, who definitely will give Jaden Daniels a run for his money in terms of the Offensive Rookie of the Year the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And Denver defensively, an amazing year this year. You had Nick Bonito and Patrick Surtain going to the Pro Bowl, and certainly Marvin Mims as well as a return specialist. But as I stated earlier, Kansas City, nothing to play for. They're good. They're solid. They've got number one seed in home field throughout the playoffs. Denver, they need this one. A win and they're in. Point blank, period. So we got the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Denver Broncos. We've got the Miami Dolphins going up against the New York Jets. So let's start off with Miami for a moment. Miami, they have to win, and they're going to need help. Tua Tagovailoa will not play in this game. A lot of Dolphins fans are concerned about that because they're on pins and needles right now saying, well, how is this going to impact the outcome of the game against the Jets? We need to win this game to get into the playoffs. And the Jets are going to bring everything that they have, right? Because the Jets, so much was at stake this year. Aaron Rodgers, not a good season, not a bad season, was marginal. His future in New York is up in the air. Mike Vrabel, former Tennessee Titans head coach, was interviewed this week by the New York Jets organization. If Vrabel becomes the head coach, or whoever becomes the head coach, will Rodgers come back in 2025? Who knows? But right now, the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, they want to finish out the year on a positive note. They also want to spoil the playoff hopes of the Miami Dolphins. And the temperature is going to be frigid, bone-chilling temperatures in the New York, New Jersey area. Playing in East Rutherford and in New Jersey Meadowlands. The Dolphins don't play well in cold weather games. And I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, he could do it. Him, Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson and company, they could spoil the hopes of the Dolphins, as I stated earlier. And it should be, Dolphins and Jets, they have a long history together. And certainly history could be made in this contest with the Miami Dolphins taking on the New York Jets. Sunday Night Football, the final game of the 2024-2025 NFL regular season. The Minnesota Vikings going up against the Detroit Lions. So for Detroit, last Monday night, they got their revenge in a revenge game against the San Francisco 49ers, a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game. For the Minnesota Vikings, it was a close but big win over the Green Bay Packers. And that sets the stage for I think what should be a blockbuster game. There's so much at stake in this contest. The winner, number one seed throughout the playoffs, home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and the NFC North Division title. Man, you talk about a lot going to be at stake at this one. And, Minnesota, they've brought it with offense and defense. Detroit, they've had a lot of injuries, especially on the defensive side. But one thing that gets them over the hump is offense. And we've seen it with guys like Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick, just to name a few. So there should be a rocking crowd in Motown in Detroit with the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Detroit Lions. All right, now it's time for my game of the week. My game of the week will be the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Detroit Lions. When you talk about one of the best rivalries, not just in the NFL, but in all of sports, one of those rivalries is the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. Their first meeting between these two franchises was November the 19th of 1961. Detroit would win 37-10. Their last meeting was a thriller, which was on October the 20th of 2024, with the Lions beating the Vikings 31-29. So the Lions and the Vikings, as I stated earlier, they've met for decades. And the rivalry has been kicked up a notch really since 2021, when the Lions pulled off the trade with the Los Angeles Rams to get Jared Goff, with Matthew Stafford going to LA and Jared Goff coming to Detroit. Lions and the Vikings, they've really gotten things going within the last several years. Those games have been very intense. And we've seen it firsthand. We've seen, again, it's been really domination, like Minnesota has dominated this rivalry, but there have been a lot of close games, especially within the last several years. And certainly, I think this game it hits different because there's so much at stake. We're talking about a division title, a number one seed, home field advantage, while the loser could get a lower seed and would have to play in the first round in a wild card game. The quarterbacks featured in this game have been phenomenal this year. Jared Goff and Sam Darnold, both going to the Pro Bowl. Darnold only on a 1-year contract. I feel the Vikings should bring him back for 2, maybe 3 more years, but we'll see how it all plays out in the offseason. Sam Darnold deserves to be an MVP candidate. He may not win it, but he should get strong consideration for the MVP honors. Jared Goff, again, since he's been in Detroit and since his head coach, Dan Campbell, that Goff and Campbell combination has worked out well thus far. And the head coaches have been great as well. Dan Campbell, fiery, you know his MO, right, as the head coach of the Detroit Lions. Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Vikings, with the nice balanced attack, of course, loves his offense. And certainly we've seen it this year, not just offensively, but defensively as well. And as I stated earlier, there's been a lot of close games in this rivalry, especially within the last several years. 2020, Vikings beat the Lions at Detroit 37-35. And then at Minnesota, Vikings win 34-20. And then in 2021 at Detroit wins 29-27. And then at Minnesota, Vikings win 19-17. 2022 at Detroit, Lions win 34-23. At Minnesota, Vikings win 28-24. 2023 at Detroit, Lions win 30-20. And then at Minnesota, Lions win 30-24. And then, of course, earlier this year, Lions win a close one, 31-29 at Minnesota. So this sets the stage for a lot of storylines. I mentioned the quarterbacks, but also you've got Jahmyr Gibbs. You've also got Aaron Jones. You've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. You've got Jordan Addison. You got Justin Jefferson. I mean, hey man, what a way to close out the NFL regular season. The Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. A lot at stake, man. And there's star power in this game. And I feel there's going to be a lot of star highlights and star performances in this contest. The Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, my game of the week. All right, before we get on out of here, I want to give you my picks on who I think will win Week 18's most important games. The New Orleans Saints versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like Tampa Bay to win. The Carolina Panthers versus the Atlanta Falcons. I like Atlanta to win. The Washington Commanders versus the Dallas Cowboys. I like Washington to win. The Kansas City Chiefs versus the Denver Broncos. I like Kansas City to win. The Miami Dolphins versus the New York Jets. I like the New York Jets to win. The Minnesota Vikings versus the Detroit Lions. I like Minnesota to win. So again, my picks are Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Washington, Kansas City, New York Jets, Minnesota. And that's it. And there you have it. And that's going to do it for another exciting edition of the program. Thank you so much for tuning in, taking time out of your busy schedule to lock in, tune in to the program. Till next time, everybody, so long, and you take care. Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the channel. Remember to click like, share, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.